figured out now how to be sexy, although I'm sure you've always been sexy, going all the way back to the spaghetti. But...
Yes. Then I did The King and I.
Good.
Then I did The King and I. And here's the interesting part of getting the role in The King and I, which I've never forgotten. It stayed with me all this time.
Was that a good experience? I want to talk about, because you're wonderful in The King and I, and I've seen it, and I love the musical.
It's a gorgeous movie.
You're wonderful in it. You're just wonderful in it, for all kinds of reasons we get into. And if I can just say this, I love watching films from back in a certain time, and certain performers are timeless when you watch them. Whatever the style is, they could be doing it right now. Right now in the year 2014, you put on a show, that performance. And you're like that. You're like that in a lot of things. You're like that in that.
Really?
You're like that in that. I mean, you're always very present and very real and very just enchanting. I wondered if it was a good experience. I hope it was, but...
it was a wonderful experience.
Good.
And it was a film where I got to meet an absolute genius, the only genius I've ever known. And that's Jerome Robbins.
Yeah.
And in fact, I did his only 2 films. I did The King and I, and then I did West Side Story. Because of King and I got into West Side Story.
I always assumed
that. To him.
That is what it is. I always assumed
it had a great deal
to
do with him. It had a great deal to do with him. But I'd never seen that kind of dancing in my life. He has such a unique dance vocabulary.
Right.
It was like nobody else's. Like Fosse had his own.
Right.
Jerry had his own. But Jerry, I think, was more varied. Fosse, after a while, you began to say, oh, that's a Fosse step.
That's right, Fosse.
Usually it had a lot to do with bumping and grinding and very sinuous, sensuous stuff. Jerry was all over the map.
He was very literate too, wasn't he? He had lots of...
Very literate.
Yeah.
He also did character work for dancers. Mm-hmm. In other words, the steps that I would do, for instance, in West Side Story, he would only have choreographed those for Anita.
Right.
He wouldn't have given those steps to, I don't know, Bernardo or another character, woman character. They were specifically Anita character type steps. He choreographed for character. And where you see it really at its best and at its keenest is in the number Cool.
Right.
In the garage, when the boys are really scared and they're looking for they're looking for Tony and can't find him. They know they're in trouble. And there's this very disturbing dance number in the garage with a very low ceiling. Now, I don't know, when was the last time you ever saw a dance number that was intense and serious and neurotic and all kinds of... Who did numbers like that? Nobody.
Right.
Not Fosse, not anybody.
Yeah.
That, to me, is the best and most brilliant number in West Side Story.
It's Tony Mordente leading it, really, isn't it, or part of it?
Well, Tony Mordente, no. Tony helped to take over when he was Chita Rivera's husband.
I know, but Keep Cool Boy, isn't he a big part of that number?
No, he's part of it, but it's not a big part of it.
Okay.
He played one of the Jets.
It's the bigger guy.
Can you imagine what it must have been like for Tony Mordente to see Rita Moreno playing his wife's role?
Well, let me ask you something. Because did Jerry Robbins ever talk to you about why he wanted you for Anita? It sounds presumptuous, but I think I know why.
No.
Well, I think I know.
That was never discussed. Her name never came up.
Well, here's why I think I think it's because, and you're beautiful and you're a wonderful dancer and have a wonderful natural, a lovely singing voice, but I think it's because you have this fire. It's there in King and I too, that sort of smoldering, win the moment, of pain and whatever. It's very real. You have that real Latino fire underneath, boom, and it comes out, and it's very real. It's not acted. And I like to think that he thought, that's what I want, because that's what we need for Anita, and you have that like nobody. That is why, and you look great dancing it. You're so sexy, but that's why you won the Academy Award, because the acting of that role holds up, like I say, today. It's terrific. If anything, it really, because West Side Story, I remember going to see it. At this point, I was a college kid or something. There are parts of it when you got to the movie that were, a little silly, and I love musicals. It was but a little silly. And then there was and then there was the real stuff. Yeah. And yours, from beginning to end, was smoldering and the thing and anguish, and also, I mean, it's a great performance.
But Ken, in fairness, I really had a great part.
It was a great part.
It's almost a scene-steely kind of part.
But there are moments,
when anybody has to play a virgin, they are screwed. Right. I did Guys and Dolls with George Chakiris in Summer Theater. Ah. Well, he played Sky Masterson. I was Adelaide.
Of course, you were Adelaide.
And we had, of course, and we had a young woman who's playing. Who was she? Miss I forget.
You mean Sarah Brown?
Sarah Brown, right? And I was watching them doing this stuff, and I thought, playing the virgin. You can't do it. It's boring. So George, being a dear and close friend whom I truly love very much, he's very close to me, he's like family. I said, George, I want to meet you after rehearsal with whatever her name was. Let's go to the bar nearby and bring the script, and I want to talk to you about this. And mostly it was really her, and I said, look, you can't play this like an you've got to have a fire in there somewhere.
There you go.
That's what attracts Sky Masterson to this fiery, puritanical, but fiery sexual woman. You've got to, put some sexuality into it. And
do you tell her to take this rose and
I did not do the rose thing.
I just wondered.
I've never done that. Can you imagine? Somebody
Let me show you a trick.
Can you imagine my friend saying, say what?
I beg your pardon?
A rose where? So, but that's what happens when you play those pure... You know what Yul Brynner said to me, which was so interesting and on the money? I met him briefly before we were to start filming, and he said, I said, I'm so looking forward to this. I so admire your work, blah, blah. He said, okay. He says, let me talk to you. Let me tell you what I think ingenues serve, what purpose they serve in musicals. They are there for the ballads, where they yearn and they're boring.
Well, you weren't.
No. He had a point, but he had a point. They're always, where is he? What happened? Oh. And he said, you can't do that. He said, so I'm sending you to an acting teacher. I'll pay for it. And he said, he sent me to a woman, a German woman, who spoke English so badly that I could barely understand what she was saying. And I'll never forget the very first class I went to with her. I was supposed to have, about 3 weeks worth of 3 times a week sessions with her to get some gumption and some stuff for my Tupton character. And she says, I want you to on the fontaine, only in the panda. And I said, excuse me? I want you to only in the panda. I couldn't. And I finally had to say to her, I remember flushing all the way up to my hairline. I was so at pains and embarrassed. I said, I'm sorry, I just don't understand what you're saying. And then she shouted it at me. Because maybe if she said it really loud, I would understand, which of course it became more distorted. And I finally left there in tears. I never told Yul. I never went back. I didn't know where he found this woman. I don't know why he thought she was so terrific, because I couldn't understand her.
Obviously, I wanted to talk about West Side because it's a great work in the American musical theater. It was a terrific film. I know you mentioned Jerry Robbins. I know that towards the end, he was such a perfectionist, as I recalled. They let him go, and Robert Wise finished it.
But let me explain what perfectionist means in terms of Jerry Robbins.
Yeah, please do.
Perfectionist means never saying print it.
That's right. And you can't do that.
You can't. Now, when you're a perfectionist like he was, and you're doing group dances, everybody is not going to be perfect.
That's right. At
the same time, it is simply not possible. The closest you can come is the closest those kids came doing the film.
Right.
But it's just simply not possible. He would re-choreograph suddenly, and then you had to worry about matching. And And, you know, I say this with such love and respect and admiration because he was the only, as I said, the only genius I think I've ever worked with.
Right.
Mike Nichols wasn't bad either.
That's right.
But he made it very difficult for them, therefore he made it difficult for him. And when we went to work one morning, we were working on the Mambo at the gym, the competition between the two gangs at the gymnasium, the dance competition. We were told one morning, Jerry's not coming back, He's been fired. We were dumbstruck. There were tons of tears, cruel as it was to many people.
Right.
But, you know, I would give my eye teeth. This minute, if he said, come work with me again, to work with him. He was a genius. But more than the genius, everyone says that. What was genius about him is that he brought out in you a creative streak that you didn't know existed in you, that goes beyond what you thought you were as a creative person. Jerry was able to mine that, tap into that.
And that had happened for you within the process.
With a vengeance. And with George Chakiris, too.
Well, just a fan question, because I've seen that film, and you know, the scene in the drugstore when you're attacked and all. I thought that I'm interested how that happened, because to me, it had a kind of a spontaneity and a improvisational quality to it that you don't
Did you see that? Did you see that?
I don't. There's something about that. I remember thinking that in the music, because it's hard, you know. Things can be a little too clean and too neat in musical. There was something very real that had nothing to do with the musical comedy that could have been in.
How interesting, because
in the way you are with it.
It is choreographed. I mean, it's a near rape scene, is what it really is.
Yeah, it is.
We called it the candy store scene. And by the way, I bet you never knew this, because there's so much happening you don't hear it. But you know what's playing on the jukebox when he turns it on? America. It's so ironic.
Great.
And
so it's choreographed, but it doesn't look so choreographed.
Jerry had those kids so head up.
Yeah.
He had them so primed that when they got to me, it became personal.
Right.
And that's the scene where Rita, broke down. And we had to stop shooting for a while. He called in early lunch, because I just went to pieces. We'd done it over and over, where they're lifting my skirt and calling me Bernardo's pig and spick and all that. And, you know, old wounds sometimes never really heal.
Right.
You know, it's a thin kind of scab sometimes that sits on these kind of psychic and emotional wounds. And obviously that was one of them. And at one point in the middle of the scene, I just started to weep and sob, and I went to the candy counter, sat on a stool, put my head on my arm, and could not stop crying. And the boys felt awful. Like, oh my, Rita, you know we love you. You know, please don't cry, please don't cry. Oh my God, the audience is going to hate us. You know, that kind of thing. I couldn't stop. And I would, you know, calm down, and then I'd start crying again. So Bob, our director, just said, why don't we just have an early lunch and go to your room and relax and rest a little bit.
Well, it's a great scene. And part of the power, as you know, is when, Anita, when you pull yourself together.
Don't you touch
me. It's great. It's great.
But you know where I got that reading?
Don't tell me.
It's so interesting. I said to myself, how would Marlon say this?
I wondered if you were going to say.
Did you? Because normally, as it's usually said on stage, don't you touch me!
That's
that
right.
kind of thing. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to go way the other way? And they don't you touch me.
That's great.
And I'm telling you, I think that's what got me the Oscar, that one line.
Well, I think it's a lot, but certainly it's significant.
Because I was acting then, I wasn't just dancing and singing.
It was all of it.
This
It
was
a great
like
performance.
From my kishkas.
All right, so now, here we are, and it's, because I can't wait to hear your version of
Oscar night.
And the winner is, you know.
Oh, my God. I have a couple of stories to tell you from
Go
that
ahead.
night. George was my date. As I said, we really, really were just nutty about each other. I loved him, but as brother and sister, I just adored him. And the film began to sweep the Oscars. George
Right.
was the first, actually, in the evening to win Best Supporting Actor.
Right.
Best Supporting Actress is very near the end, when the I think just before Sophia Loren won for two women.
Right.
And Maximilian Schell won for Judgment at Nuremberg.
Judgment at Nuremberg.
And so I had a long wait. When my name was called, I was ready to put on. Oh, look, here's another wonderful, ironic thing. In back of me is sitting Una Merkel. Una Merkel played the supporting role of the crazy mother in Summer and Smoke.
Right.
Which I was in also.
Well, she had a great long career, didn't she?
But I was in the same film at the same time that she was. I was making Summer and Smoke while I was doing West Side Story. I did 2 films at once.
Wow.
They really, for whatever reasons, I don't remember what they were, Paramount wanted me for the role of Rosa in Summer and Smoke. So a deal was made where when I had days off from West Side Story, I would go over to Paramount and play Rosa for Peter Glenville, the English director, in Summer and Smoke. And there's Una Merkel in back of me.
Such a trooper. Nobody would believe that while you're doing West Side Story, you're also doing another film.
Oh, I was exhausted.
I'll bet.
Anyway, when they called my name, because I thought, really, at that point, we'd won everything. And at that point, like a good Puerto Rican, I thought, well, my luck. I'll be the only one who doesn't get the Oscar. I have to put on my bravest face. Rock Hudson calls out my name. I get up. My mom grabs me from the back. I invited my mom, which was so wonderful. And I hurried down because I was way back. And I said to myself, don't run. It's undignified. Mm-hmm. Because I had seen many famous actresses run to reach the stage before the applause stopped.
That's right.
Right? And I said, it doesn't matter if the applause stops, don't you run. And I didn't. And of course, the movie was so beloved, the applause didn't stop.
No.
You know, went all the way up, followed me to the stage. And I was absolutely unprepared for winning, truly. I hadn't prepared anything. I was so sure that Judy Garland was going to win for Judgment at Nuremberg. Right. I mean, all these circumstances called for it. She was in the hospital. There was a camera in the hospital. It was like a comeback performance. It was Judy not singing. It was Judy being tragic. All that stuff. And when my name was called, I was stunned. And I go up to the stage and deliver one of the worst acceptance speeches ever, except for this wonderful actress who is in Nurse Jackie, who said, thank you, I got to go.
I love that.
I need to. Go well, that was me. I just said.
So what did you say?
I said.
I think I remember you.
I said, I can't believe it. Yeah. And I waited for something to come out. And then I said, good Lord, I leave you with that. And I left.
Fine.
But here's what happened with Joan Crawford and the Wings, which is so, these are the inside Hollywood stories that I adore. Right. So Joan Crawford was the co-MC that year. And she was married to Mr. Pepsi Cola. I don't remember.
Yes, right.
Yeah. And she had a Pepsi cooler in her dressing room, which was on stage right wings. Mm-hmm. And in the Pepsi cooler was a lot of vodka with Pepsi. So she was in her cups by the time I won my award. I run into the wings and into her outstretched arms. Never met her. And she embraces me. There's a photographer right there. She embraces me and says, oh my God. And the photographer says, Miss Crawford, can I see Rita's face? She says, well, she's so upset. And I said, I'm not upset. My face isn't hurt. She's built like a linebacker. Right. And I said, I'm not upset. No, there. So I said, I'm not upset. And they finally had to literally wrest her fingers from me and turn me around to take a picture with her and then go to the green room to do what you're supposed to do. A week later, I'm in Manila finishing this awful, crappy World War II film, back to the Dusky Maidens roles.
Right.
And I get it. She was famous for writing notes, and sure enough, blue stationery, Joan Crawford in script, and it's a note, my darling Rita. I never did meet her, actually, even that evening.
Right.
She just, grabbed me and attacked me.
Right.
It's my darling Rita. How incredibly generous of you to stop by and talk to me after such an emotional moment in your life. Don't you love that?
So that's what the history will be.
Yeah.
The history according to Joan.
I love that.
All right, so now you've won, and I know, so now you've gone off to something else. And now, because I find this part fascinating, that in an extraordinary performance, you win the Oscar, and I think there was a great sense of, in that room, I seem to recall, of real joy that you'd won it, that you should have won
There
it,
was
that you were the one to win it.
Everybody in that
It was
show
the right
who
one. Yeah.
won. There was.
That's right. And then, you didn't do a movie for
7 years.
7 years.
7 years.
When is the Oscar? When is West Side Story Oscar? 64?
65 for 60, 66 for 65. I won it in 66.
66 for 65.
Yeah.
And then what was the next movie that you did?
What happened is
well, tell me about that. And
what
also
happened is that nothing was offered, and finally a few little dribbles came in to do a couple of gang movies, B movies.
Right.
And I decided then and there, I've done this
been there,
so many times, because you and I haven't really gone over the horror of my Hollywood days as a young girl, and that's very well told in the book, because it's important. A lot of people don't realize what it was like in Hollywood in those times. Anyway, that's all I was offered, and I said, no, I don't care if I don't work another day again. I am not going to play those roles anymore until Poppy with Alan Arkin.
Oh, Poppy. Oh,
wonderful.
That's a wonderful movie.
Oh, it's a great movie.
At times, a little bit, it reminds me of, I know there are many stories like this, but it's a little bit like Anne Bancroft's story, too, of,
Only she got the roles. I got all of the roles that Anne Bancroft, that I wanted, Bancroft got.
But the contract player, and then thinking, no, I'm going to change this. I'm going to change the way I'm seen.
Yeah.
And it takes real courage, and you did do that. So Poppy was the next one when you came back.
And again, I played a Latina, but I didn't play a cliche, stereotypical Latina. I played Alan Arkin's girlfriend, no accents.
That's Arthur Hiller?
Arthur Hiller, those amazing kids, those boys.
Great. Oh, it's a wonderful film.
Yeah, it's a very political film.
Yes,
I don't know if you
very
remember.
good. I do. I remember I've been being very moved by the scene when he throws himself into the ocean to trying to feel it.
He puts the kids in a boat and hopes that people will discover them as though they were coming from Cuba.
I remember later he throws himself in the ocean to try to kind of be with them or to experience it or something.
Oh, he was,
tough
he's
stuff.
just, I love him.
Now, I don't want to, there are certain things I'd love to hear you talk about. I know you did a lot of wonderful work in television. I'd love to hear just a little bit about Carnal Knowledge, because it's Mike Nichols, and I'm sure he's great to work with, and it's a wonderful
book.
scene. And
it's an amazing, it's an amazing script.
Yeah.
It's an amazing play. Jules Pfeiffer wrote that.
Yeah.
And it was so ahead of its time. Oh, my God. Do you know that the Supreme Court of Georgia banned it?
Yeah.
Georgia never saw that movie.
Well,
Imagine.
That's right.
In their wisdom, they banned the movie. And it was a great experience. It was great working with Mike. He loves actors.
Yes.
And when you're working with him in back of the camera, and he makes all of those fabulous, appreciative expressions come on his face, he's quelling over you.
How did that happen? Did you just call with an agent, or did he call you, or did you remember how that happened?
It's always a mystery to me, because I thought, why would he wanted to see me?
Yeah.
And one day I thought, I really must ask him why. Because I turned it down, mostly because I knew my husband would be very unhappy with the content. Right. It's one scene, but it's quite a scene.
It's a great scene.
Oh, it's astonishing and eerie and strange. Right. And my husband read it. He said, "You're not going to do this, are you?" I said, "It's Mike Nichols."
It's Mike Nichols.
It's Jack Nicholson.
Also means it won't be in bad taste. So you know this.
Well,
that is
but
Nichols.
to my husband, that was. You have to read the script at that time.
Without realizing how. Because Nichols is good that way. He has good taste.
And I turned it down, and the agent called. He said he really, really wants to see you. He wants to tell you how he's going to do this scene and all that kind of stuff. Well, by the time he was through with me, I would have
He
followed
owned you.
him.
That's right.
Because, you know, the way he said, it's all about you. You know, in the best manner, a really good director who wants that particular actor, it's really about you, you know.
Right.
And in a way, it was about what happens with that character and how she becomes... What's fascinating about that character, she's a hooker, high-priced hooker, that she becomes she dominates him.
Right.
Because she has the power to satisfy him sexually.
Right.
Or not. So
Right.
she becomes the boss, as it were.
Right.
So to that extent, the role is really very meaningful and very important. But it was a very hard scene to do because it's a monologue.
Yeah.
And I had to look into the camera as though the lens as though it were Jack. Jack was wonderful about it. He lay under that camera for days while I did that bloody monologue. And it took ever so many takes because we were on a hydraulic platform. Jules Pfeiffer described it as, it seems as though she is descending forever.
You'll remember. What's the line that you say wrong? The sky's the limit?
Oh, yeah.
A brilliant moment.
And he says, that's not what you always
That's
say.
not what you're supposed to say.
Yeah.
Is it the sky's the limit, or
I don't
that's
know.
either what you say, but it should have been something else?
It should have been something like that.
Like that, but it's not quite.
But it's so, which tells the audience it's a
remarkable.
ritual.
It's a ritual. It's a remarkable
She
moment.
has to say exactly the same thing every time.
Well, you're great at that. Some roles, you know, that you just define. You can't imagine anyone else doing it as well. Because I know your career pretty well, but you've done so much, and films, and much television. And so,
I loved working in Oz.
Oh, yes, I would think.
I absolutely loved working in Oz because, again, talk about going against type.
Right.
I remember when I had a dinner with Tom Fontana, who produced and wrote it.
Right.
And for those who may not remember, he also did Homicide: Life on the Streets with his partner, Barry. And I had a dinner with him because he wanted to meet me and tell me what he had in mind for me. My husband was there, and we get to dessert, and I'm saying, well, all right, now let's get to business. What is it you would like me to play? Tell me about this series that you're going to do for HBO. And he tells me in some detail that it's about life in a maximum security prison. And then I thought, well, he's known for unusual casting. I thought, maybe he thinks I should be the warden. I thought, doesn't seem right. He said, what part do you have in mind for me? And I was about to put a piece of cake in my mouth, and he says, well, I want you to play the nun. I said, you want me to play a nun? And he said, yeah. And he said it like that, you know. I said, you want me to play a nun? And he says, yeah, because until then I was still doing this sexy, stupid stuff.
Right.
Not out of choice, but because that's all there was. And
He wanted a sexy nun. It's easy, Rita. You just don't.
No. He said, I said, you know, I just, you know, with my luck, this is going to be a big hit, this show. And I'm going to be stuck in a wimple for the rest of my life. And I said, I can't bear the thought of that. He said, no, God, no. I was saying Sally Field.
Right.
At the time. And he said, no, she's nothing remotely like that. And he explained her to me, and I thought, wow. He said, but you have to think carefully because you're not going to look pretty. And you're not going to look youthful necessarily because the lights are going to be very harsh.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to decide. And I really did some deep thinking. I went home, and it took me a few days because I thought, face it, you're now, I don't know, what was I then, 50 or something like that? I don't remember. Maybe I was in my 60s. Yeah. And I said, life's going to change for you once you do something like this. And then I just said, you know what? That's okay.
You know, it's funny you say that because I always thought, I don't mean in life, I don't mean going out and being your glamorous self, but I always thought as an actress you weren't vain at all. It always seemed to me that you had that sort of approach, that sort of Betty Davis, you know, whatever it takes, no makeup, a lot of makeup. I always had that feeling about you, so it's funny you say that because I would have thought you would have said,
it wasn't a question of vanity. It's knowing that you're going to look this way and that other people are going to judge you who are in a position to employ you.
That's true.
And I lost some parts because of that. I even lost a meeting with the director for a series because he said, oh, God, she looks like a wreck.
Oh, yeah.
And it broke my heart. It just broke. I said, at least see me. I was deliberately showing up at parties I didn't want to go to show people that I really looked swell.
That's
Going to the openings of an envelope like Sylvia Miles, because I really had to let people know that I was looking good. I've always looked good for my age, and but a lot of people who were in a position to give me a job didn't, because I didn't look good in it. But it's such a crazy business I'm in. I got a ton of respect. A ton of respect.
You're a great talent. Tell me a little bit about, in any way you want, just a thought or two about Marlon Brando and your relationship, because you're a great talent and he's a great talent, and I'm sure that was a great part of your relationship too. I'm sure he had
my relationship with Marlon, really essentially, which turned into something else, initially was he was gorgeous. He was the king of sexual gods. He was a Roman coin.
Right.
I mean, he really looked that way, and he had that, charisma was really invented for him. Right. And then after that, it became so overused. Marlon was charismatic. Yeah. He really was. He could hold the attention of anybody in any place. I don't care how crowded it was. This is a man who just would kind of stop traffic. And what's a poor little Puerto Rican girl to do, for God's sake? So I fell madly in love with him. He fell in love with me. And then it turns out he's a major, the king of philanderers. Mm-hmm. And he was not about to be trapped into one relationship with one woman. And it took 8 years for me to wrest myself loose from that, along with a suicide attempt to help make that happen. And it wasn't an attempt. I really meant business.
Was the night of the following day early on in your relationship?
The night of the following day, the film that I did with him was after the suicide. After all that, I had a little 3-year-old girl at the time, Fernanda, and I went to do the film with my husband's full understanding, and to France to make that film with him. And it's the last time that Marlon looked good.
I only saw it when it came out, and I thought it was a wonderful movie, a fascinating.
Actually, it was a fascinating movie. Yeah. It was a film noir.
Yeah.
It was based on a real story, the Peugeot kidnapping of the Peugeot daughter.
Right.
The car company, and it was, the problem with it is that it was directed by a person who'd never directed before, who was a graphic designer. So he had a great eye. The movie had a fabulous look about it. And he had a wonderful, wonderful cameraman who I'd never seen that before. He had that camera on his shoulder all the time. Right. He carried the camera all the time.
Right.
And his lighting was fascinating. It was really great looking. Richard Boone was in it.
Right.
And he was so sinister. He was just frightening in it. But nobody ever saw it. Nobody ever saw it.
Well, for some reason I did, and I liked it. I remember it was interesting.
It's
and
an
you
interesting
were marvelous
film.
in it.
It wasn't a great film, but it looked European.
Right.
It had a very European
And I think
look.
you had some great scenes together because you had a knowledge of each other. So
and he said to me, change your image, so we put a blonde wig on me.
Right.
He put on a blonde wig. And as I said, he had just finished Last Tango in Paris, which was not out yet.
Right.
And he said, change your image. Come on, let's both be different. And we did, and we got along. But there's one scene that took place in that movie that is a great inside story, because it's a big story in the blogs and stuff. It's the scene where I get angry at him because I think he's been out with another woman. Mm-hmm. And this all takes place in France,
right.
In Normandy, actually. And I'm very angry at him. My character is a cocaine addict. So she's a little bit kind of zonked, and she accuses him of being with somebody else, and she gets very angry and slaps him, and a fight ensues. Now, I really have a thing about violence, even when it's make-believe. I will do anything I can not to hit somebody. I can't do it.
Right.
I remember having a terrible time with Faye Dunaway because I was supposed to slap her, and I couldn't do it.
Right.
And I couldn't do it, and she finally smacked me so hard I smacked her back. Then I was able to do it, but it was very hard for me. I don't like that. But Marlon said, you have to really slap me. He said, you can't fake it because I'm not going to react the right way. Boy, was he right. So we rehearsed it a lot, and we improvised it. That film, we improvised most of our dialogue.
Right.
And we get to the part, and I slap him. And something so frightening happened. His hairline moved back like with an animal. And he looked at me like this. This is what he would do when he was really, really, really angry. His teeth would come like this. And I thought, oh my God, he is taking, all the pond scum that we had been through together for 8 years rose up above this pool of darkness. And he hauled off and socked me so hard on the jaw that I literally, now I know what they mean when they say, you see stars? I did. It was so hard. Got me right on the jaw. And I went berserk because now all my pond scum stuff came up. I mean, it was crazy. And I attacked him, and he got frightened of me, and he's going like this. And it's the only scene in the film that everybody who loves, it's a cult film now, says that's the realest scene. And
it's a great scene.
They don't know why.
Yeah.
They don't know why. The director saw it and said, I'm not cutting a thing. That's
a great
staying
scene.
just the way it is. The next day I said to my husband, the dailies are on tonight. You go see. I said, I'm too embarrassed. You go see. So he went to see, and he came back, and he said, what a man. He said, wow, you two are really terrific actors. What a mensch.
A mensch.
My husband.
Well, you're a mensch. You've been very... you're a great storyteller. I know from other times. I could listen to you, and we've probably gone longer than we should have.
That would be fun. Then in that case, we have to have dinner.
Great.
Bring your wife.
Great. I'd love that. Just wonderful. Thank you so much,
You're
Rita.
welcome. I'm delighted.
We'll cull some from this.
Oh, I'm sure you will.